This is KTN News.
Welcome back to the program once again. If you're just joining us, this is your favorite Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa. And it's about time we go straight to a studio discussion tonight. Once again, let me reintroduce our guest in studio. We have Calvin Sodoyo-Owidi, a NASA strategist as well as a political analyst, Washington Makodingo, Jubilee strategist and a political analyst, Kakai Kissinger, a lawyer, and of course he also doubles up as a political analyst. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, of course, today, the Kenya's highest court, that is Supreme Court of Kenya, has upheld President Uhuru Kenyatta's victory. Now, Kakai, let me begin with you. There are those who come from the school of thought saying, you know, that the process, as much as it has conferred legal legitimacy on the election, it has lacked to deal with the political legitimacy. So what will that mean for President Uhuru Kenyatta and, by extension, the Jubilee Party?
Thank you very much. I think what was before the court was a legal question, and it had nothing to do with political legitimacy.
Yes.
What the court was dealing with is that those were the legal issues or questions that had been raised by the petitioners to deal with them. And then the court has made a decision and a pronouncement on the legal issues. We need now, at this point, to understand that there's a very huge difference between a legal challenge and a political challenge.
Yes.
In terms of legitimacy, the question of legitimacy, and insofar as the legality is concerned, is now settled and completely finished by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not a court that deals with political legitimacy.
Yes.
Political legitimacy is something that now the parties themselves have to know how the means and ways of dealing with it. So we need not to confuse Kenyans by linking both political and legal legitimacy.
Now, Owidi, do you agree with Kakai that those talking about political legitimacy, those who are questioning President Uhuru Kenyatta's win after the October 26th election, do you agree with him that that is a matter that has been settled by the court?
I didn't hear him very well in the beginning. There was poor sound, but nevertheless, the results today of the Supreme Court are 75% political and 25% legal. And I think that is what you are expecting even in the beginning.
Yes.
However, you know, the absence of NASA made it very easy for them to take any route they wanted to take. They chose to take the route that the cases that were presented before the Supreme Court lacked merit.
Yes.
This time round, they did not talk about illegalities and irregularities. They just talked about this thing lacked merit. So as we wait for the 21 days, we can always decipher what the Supreme Court was saying.
So up until now, you're saying that NASA disagrees with the ruling that was made today?
First of all, it is very important for us to understand that NASA did not participate in the election. Neither did they participate in the court proceedings or did they go to court for any reason.
Yes.
Their take is that they still believe that the 26th of October election was illegal. It wasn't there in the first place. It was null and void. So as it is today,
before I cross over to Makodingo, this is the same court, the Supreme Court of Kenya, the same court that the opposition totally agreed with when they first made their ruling, that is after the August 8th election. Now, why is the opposition, that is NASA, disagreeing with the court this time round? Is it because it has not favored the opposition?
When you saw the reaction of the president, immediately the initial ruling was made. You know that the Supreme Court was now put under siege. They are to rule the way the president wants them to rule. If the president didn't talk the way he did after the initial ruling of the 8th of August elections, I'm sure the Supreme Court would have still been very fair in their judgments. Nevertheless, NASA did not care where the case would go. whether it went the way of Uhuru or the way of the petitioners, they didn't care much because they did not want to participate in what they don't believe existed in the very first place.
Now, Makadingo, as a Jubilee strategist, and you've seen these sentiments being made by NASA that they don't recognize President Uhuru Kenyatta's government. Actually, they're not even interested with that ruling that was made today by the highest court in the land, that is the Supreme Court. So what is Jubilee's point of view towards this?
Thank you, Yusuf. First of all, let's get a couple of things straight. There was an election on 8th that was nullified by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, going by the Constitution, ordered a repeat election within 60 days. Jubilee began campaigns immediately. We went for this election. Elections were conducted on 26th. Elections that NASA threatened every single day for the 56 days in the run-up to the election, that there shall be no elections. There was an election on 26th. People voted, myself included. Some people went to court. The Supreme Court today pronounced itself unequivocally that there was an election, the election was legitimate, the win by the president, the 98% win by the president was upheld today.
Yes,
so
but
all
Makodingo,
these questions,
why are you not mentioning the 39% voter turnout?
Yusuf, that is a debate we can have for many, many years. Yeah? But the Constitution says that for you to be elected president, you need 50% plus 1 of all the valid votes cast, even if it's 15%, and 25% in at least 24 counties. The president got 98% of all valid votes cast in 43 counties. I mean, there is no question as to legitimacy.
So does it concern Jubilee in any way that only 39% of Kenyans actually came out and exercised their democratic right, while a huge chunk, did not participate in that election?
Why didn't people participate in the election? One, NASA called for a boycott, so a significant portion of their supporters did not show up. But even in the places, the polling stations that opened, they nearly in what were 263 constituencies. Even in those polling stations, violence or threats of violence by NASA and their supporters stopped a lot of people from going to vote. Despite that, 7.4 million people out of the 8 million that voted for the president still turned up to vote. 95% of the people who voted for the president on 8th actually turned up to vote. How better can you explain a win than that? And remember, this is a repeat election. In the first election, there are a lot of other factors. There are MCAs running, there are MPs, there are governors, there are senators. There are a lot of people that are taking people to the polling station. Repeat elections, runoff, reruns are hardly. In fact, our turnout was pretty better. It was actually better than the France election that took place not too long ago. So I don't understand where this math about 39%, when people were threatened, when there was violence, when people boycotted elections, we did pretty well, in fact.
And Kakaya, I'm sure this might be a difficult question as a legal mind. Can you perhaps summarize for us and tell us the difference between, the first ruling and this one that happened today? I mean, because there are those who argue saying, the evidence adduced then and now almost similar.
Let me add something to what Makodinga has talked about. I think we all understand that the Kenyan legal process or electoral process applies what we call first past the post. First past the post is an electoral system in the world. Actually, the second foremost electoral system in the world, and Kenya applies this. What that just means is that any winner or any contestant in an electoral process who gets the highest votes then becomes or is declared a winner. And in Kenya, we apply this kind of a system. So the issue of numbers at the point then becomes moot because now the winner gets the majority votes and becomes the elected president. Now, when you look at as long as, of course, they comply with the Constitution, the way Mark Odinga has talked about, but when you look at the first petition and the second petition, there's a very huge difference. The first petition dealt with two major issues or two major things. One, the quantitative test, where now the numbers came in, and the qualitative test. But in this petition, we dealt more with the qualitative test. What do we mean by the word qualitative test? The word meaning of qualitative test means, therefore, that the court was to answer some questions, to help the petitioners answer some questions. Was the election did the election take place? Was it done legally, sound? Did it follow all the procedures that are laid down? were the voters allowed to go and participate in a vote? Did they go and vote or not? That was now entirely a qualitative test. So therefore, the difference amounts in the sense that the first one, we are dealing more with both qualitative and quantitative, where we dealt with more of the numbers, but this one was more of the qualitative. The procedure was the Supreme Court, since the Supreme Court made a decision that there has to be a repeat election, was the repeat election done according to the law? And that is what the question that was being dealt with in this petition. And that was the fundamental difference. So I don't see where now the issues of numbers should then come in right now.
Apart from the issues of numbers, Kakai, one of the concerns raised by the opposition is that they're saying, quote unquote, that the judges were operating under duress, and the judges have been operating in what they've termed as, quote unquote, a toxic environment. What can you say about that?
You know, as a Supreme Court or any court of law, if they do right, then it's okay. If they do wrong, then some other parties will be complaining. So either way, they are damned in whatever they are doing. But in any event, that's a position that NASA itself is taking, which of course I don't know how they are taking about it. But I think we need to ask ourselves why we actually established the Supreme Court, why we actually established institutions, why we have a constitution that guarantees fundamental rights and freedoms, and that guarantees independence of the institution. I think we are proud when we say that our institutions are independent. And they cannot only now, therefore, be accused of not being independent when they are not ruling in your favor. We need to understand that these are the institutions that we have developed over the years. People have fought for these institutions. We have put proper mechanisms and proper legal framework in these institutions, and they're independent. I do not want to think at any given time that any of those judges was not independent. They were independent.
Yes, before you go to Kavis, before you go across over to Kavis, one question for you, Kakai. Of course, the office of the presidency service is supposed to serve as a symbol of national unity. And clearly, the country is divided. Those who are saying actually Kenya is a fractured country. So moving forward, once the president is sworn in, we're going to talk about the process and everything, because I know you got involved in his first swearing in when he assumed office. How will the president manage to govern a country that is sharply divided?
I think we all admit that we may be sharply divided, and we are divided not on the legalistic point of view, but we are divided in terms of the political aspects of the process. And it's normal for a country to go through division in terms of politics. But we've come a long way in terms of our country, going around and navigating around the issues of divisions in politics. But you remember one of the things is that there has been a metamorphosis in terms of the president. The president began this journey as, first of all, a candidate. He has now become a president-elect, and soon he will be sworn in as a sitting president. So in my assumption, therefore, I'll think that probably during the swearing-in ceremony, his speech will be very clear in terms of how he wants to unite the country. And going forward, when he's now sworn in, because now he will have the legality and the responsibility to take over the country, he should be able to give guidelines of how he will be able to unite this country. And of course, that's not something that is difficult. He will do it, and I'm very sure that he should be able to unite this country and forge forward in terms of development and peace.
Now, Kavins, when the NASA CEO was asked what options are there for NASA in 7 days, he told KTN exclusively just about an hour ago that according to him, quote unquote, we have a range of options in our hands. Swearing in Raila Odinga is one of our options on the table. It has been considered robustly.
Yusuf, before I even talk about that, which I know the people at the NASA headquarters will talk about much, much more better than me, I want to remind my friends that an election is a process that begins such a long time ago. You need to remember that when Akombe quit IEBC and walked away and said all that she said, nobody even bothered to find out how true or how false they were. When Chebukati himself talked, nobody even cared to find out how true or how false they were. So when somebody comes here and tells us that the institutions in Kenya are independent and can do things without misbehavior like what we have seen in IBC, I think he's wrong. Even the Kenya National Examinations Council, which has been there for years, we found that there were people who are obtaining certificates through fraudulent means. In fact, President Uhuru Kenyatta is like a student who is getting a job using a fraudulently obtained certificate. What he has done...
Kavins, that returns me back to my earlier question that I posed to you, the statement there from NASA's CEO. Does it mean you disagree with him, actually?
I do not disagree with him. But
so that is still a valid option by NASA?
Of course it is.
Now, Makadingo, you've heard that statement from Norman Magaya. How will Jubilee take that?
I have said this before. The Law Society of Kenya has a president. Babu Owino was president of SONU. The Children's Parliament has a president. If NASA wants to create some presidency in the form of a Children's Parliament president, we don't mind. I mean, they can go and do whatever it is they want. But the president that is recognized by the Constitution, that will be sworn in on 28th, constitutionally before the Chief Justice, is Uhuru Kenyatta. Everything else is neither here nor there. It's hot air. I mean, they can do whatever it is they want. If they want to keep carrying their supporters along with falsehoods and false hope, it's okay. I'm hoping that their supporters can move on pretty fast, can get out of this denial stage where somehow people are still imagining that maybe something will happen, maybe somehow Raila will become president. The truth is, Raila will not become president. Uhuru will be sworn in next week on Tuesday. This thing is over. It is time, as a country, we figured out how to bring everybody else on board and move together in terms of building the nation and developing the nation. So that then we move,
Kavis, I'm going to give you time to react to that. But now, Kakai, one of the main agenda by NASA, something that they've raised time and again, has issues to do with electoral justice. And they're saying they're not going to give, the government any time to, peaceful environment to operate up until electoral justice is achieved. How best do you think the country can achieve to get a just electoral system? Because this seems to be the bone of contention every year when there's an election.
I think we have to understand one thing, that as a country we've come very far in terms of reforming the institution that is meant to deal with electoral justice in this country. If, for example, if you look at the history, we had the Kivuitu Commission. Kivuitu Commission had its own challenges because Kivuitu Commission was not a commission entirely that was independent. It was a quasi-government institution. And we went through so many reforms. And after the Kivuitu Commission disappeared, we came up with the Hassan Commission. And the Hassan Commission was more of independent in terms of the law now was designed in a way that you make it independent. And so after the Hassan Commission, then we have the Chebukati Commission. Now, you've seen a metamorphosis of reforms that have taken place in our systems in terms of electoral process. We've reformed the institutions that deal with the electoral process to a level whereby we are an envy of all African countries. And I always keep saying that the only country probably you'll want to compare with Kenya in terms of electoral process and election engineering will be probably Ghana. So when you see that we've made this milestone for an institution, we should now then stand there as a country, as a people, as a nation, and safeguard these reforms that we have actually contributed to these institutions. So there's nothing wrong with the legal framework that actually exists at the moment. We may have a few challenges here and there, but still you can see that there have been so many petitions going on, and we are still using these examples to change the constitution and the examples to change the legal reforms that are in existence. So when we talk about reforms and when we talk that NASA wants to continue pushing for these reforms, it's a good idea. It's a good agenda, yes. But then for how long are you going to reform an institution? For how long are we going to have a mercy to understand that this institution also needs time to work? Look at what IEBC has gone through in this election. With even the limited challenges they had and the few occasions they had in terms of coming to office. Look, they have been able to deliver an election. This election, of course, the first one was challenged, which is okay. It's normal to go through these challenges. The second one has now passed, and it has been given a good credibility for the election. So I think we need to understand that we have institutions. And I keep repeating that we have very good independent institutions. We must be proud of them. We must safeguard them. But we must have political tolerance to ensure that this institution exists because of our political nature. Electoral systems in all over the world is a legal process and a political process. And the two must merge. The two must be together. The two must speak to one another. So that is the challenge we have in Kenya. We do not have political tolerance in terms of ensuring that these institutions are able to deliver credible elections. So we may make a lot of noise, we may complain, but as where I sit and where I see or how I look at it as an expert in terms of elections, I think we are okay as a country.
Kavis, do you agree with Kakai that for now the country is okay with, he's okay with the country, of course, that's what he said, and that, reforms in these, and especially the electoral body, is not something that is going to happen overnight, but it's something that is going to take time?
The electoral body must be reformed. What we are having in Kenya today is a situation where Kenyans vote down there, their votes disappear in between there. By the time they re-emerge 10 times the number they voted. Whenever IEBC is asked to show us what their system is like, to show us the logs. They always refuse. Even this time round at the Supreme Court, they brought in a very interesting scenario that the petitioners wanted the data in the servers to be shown. They went and copied the data and brought. What the petitioners wanted was an access to the servers so that they can see the logs in and out. Then they told the court that, you know, this is 48 GB and you'll take 3 years to access it. The internet has trillions of those GBs, and we keep on accessing every day. What we wanted is to access the data to confirm A, B, C, D, not to confirm everything, or the 48 GB that is in there. And we did not want them to copy the data inside the servers and bring it out. It was to check, to have access so that we can check from time to time, this is true, this is false. But because we also have a Supreme Court that contains judges which are technologically illiterate. They are not illiterate technologically, so they don't understand. Take a scenario where you go to a supermarket. To know the price of an item you want to buy, they scan the item so that the data comes out. If they can't scan, there's a number there which they key in the system so that the data comes out. This is how the KIEMS kits work. But then they confuse the country, that these things don't work like this. There is another register that we can use that is a hard copy. That hard copy is printed from the server. So if the server can't give us the details of a person, it means the person does not exist in the server, and this hard copy is irrelevant and it's fraudulent.
Yes, Kaviz, I think you've well articulated your issues. Now, can you perhaps, I think this should be your final comment because we're almost out of time. What is their next move, perhaps, from Raila Odinga and by extension NASA? Because we're getting reports that he might make a statement in the next 7 days, bearing in mind that the court has just quashed or issued an order stopping the creation of the People's Assemblies.
First of all, we have to understand that we have two people here. We have the NASA team and we have the Jubilee team. Jubilee team is governed by projects because from projects you get the necessary kickbacks. NASA is governed by the people. They are fighting for the people. If we leave this thing as it is now, in 2022,
so what are the options? What are Raila's options moving forward?
Raila's options is to fight until there's a reform in the electoral system in Kenya, where I can vote in my primary school, I can see the vote at the constituency tallying center, and I can see it at the national tallying center, and I can want to verify how it moved, and I'll be shown all the logs of how it moves. But here in Kenya, you are told, check your registration using an SMS. You can see yours. But how about the millions of fake ones that are in there? Who is going to find them out?
Yes, Makodingo, it seems it's not yet over. Is there any reason for Jubilee to worry?
Yusuf, I think you need to stop bringing people to the show who did not vote on October 26th because they have absolutely no clue what happened. I was at Bomas for the entire period that the elections, that the results were transmitted. And the one thing that IBC was clear on, even before elections, was that every political party had access to the servers. Nobody brought problems. Everyone had access to those servers, including the petitioners. So this nonsense about IBC being opaque, I think they did marvelously well this time, as they did on August 8th, even though there might have been problems. I think at some point, Raila has to realize that Kenya is bigger than him and his ambitions, that he cannot continue saying that the people have said this, the people are not happy. The people who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta are also the people. Yeah, in fact, Uhuru has a majority of Kenyans. So in fact, he has a legitimate claim to say that he has popular will, because he does. I mean, he won the election by 98%. I can't stop repeating this. There are people on the Jubilee side as well. We cannot operate as if the only people are the Raila supporters from, in fact, 27 constituencies in Luo Nyanza. The rest of the country has moved on. We've seen today Busia people are celebrating.
But I'm sure you'll agree with me. The 27 constituencies are also equally Kenyans. Now, Kakai, one final question to you. As a person who has experience, of course, in electoral matters, you were involved in the swearing in of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Perhaps what are the legal steps to the swearing in of the president? Very briefly, before you wrap up.
The president has metamorphosized. He was a presidential candidate, now he's a president-elect, and soon he's going to be sworn in as a president. Now, what happens right now is that immediately the decision was made today, he now becomes captured by the Assumption of Office Committee. There's a law called Assumption of Office Act, which now establishes a committee, and the committee is made up of 20 people, and these 20 people come from different ministries: Foreign Affairs, defense, and other and judiciary, of course, takes part in it, because, of course, they'll be inviting many other people from all over the world. So this 20 committee, and the Attorney General also sits in it, and the Solicitor General sits in it. These 20 committee members then are under the mandate to actually now ensure that the place of swearing in of the president is in order. Now, there will be a Gazette notice therefore issued immediately, whereby it will state where the president will be sworn in. In most cases, the law says the president should be sworn in a public place. So he can decide to be sworn in any of the stadiums. So, for example, if he chooses to be sworn in if the committee decides to swear him in Uhuru Park, or they decide to swear him in Afraha, or whatever it is, it must be a public place. But that swearing in must be on a Tuesday, and therefore you have to start counting 7 days from today, but that day must end up on a Tuesday. So by 28th of next week, you have to be sworn in. But the most interesting thing about the legal process is that it takes two dimensions. One, it takes a legal dimension, whereby now the judiciary has to be involved actively, and then it takes a military dimension, because the military must also swear him in, because they must now pass instruments of power to him, and it must be done within a specific time frame, up to between 10 to 2 p.m.
Yeah. It seems we need another show, Kakai, for you to deeply explain those processes. Thank you very much for your input. Kakai Kissinger is a lawyer. He also doubles up as a political analyst. Earlier on, of course, we spoke to Washington Makudingo, a Jubilee strategist, as well as a political analyst, as well as Kavis Odoyo Owidi, a NASA strategist, also doubles up as a political analyst. Many thanks, all of you, for your input. But for now, there's no way we're going to end the show without our proverb of the day. A very interesting proverb there from Uganda. And finally, we did ask you in a Twitter poll tonight, are you confident that Kenya will heal from the 2017 election? And 40% of you said yes, and 60% of you said no. Let me just go through only 2 or 3 of your comments here. At Tomdo Wardabedi says, no, this question was raised in 2002, 2007, 2013, and now in 2017. All these years, no serious healing process has ever been undertaken. And then at Jaylee says, you can't unify without justice and clarity. One final one. At Martin Shegan says, now that all the legal processes has been exhausted, let Uhuru dialogue with Ruto to execute. Okay. It seems we have a lot of emotional comments there, but keep the conversation going. And that brings us to the end of our show tonight. Many thanks for watching. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. And that brings us to the end. Remember, this show is aired every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. Until tomorrow, same place, same time. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your night.